All right, welcome everybody to our special meeting held by the Bethel Board of Education, working on our strategic plan. Brandon, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. King?
Here.
Ms. Reese?
Present.
Ms. Sebastian?
Here.
Mr. Elam?
Here.
Ms. Mansfield?
Here.
All right, we're good.
All right, copy that. I'll turn it over to Mr. Firks.
Well, appreciate everybody being here this evening. Thank you for your time and obviously the willingness to come on Zoom session to continue our work with a very important project that we have going on, one of many very important projects that we have going on in the district. The administration team was able to, and supervisors were able to meet with Mr. DeMauro today from, I think we were on from around 1 o'clock to 3, I believe it was.
Hours, yeah.
Yeah, and we were able to discuss a lot of good stuff, and he was able to kind of solidify some of the objectives on here and provide examples and viable walkthroughs as far as different scenarios of things that need to be done. As he indicated this morning, or excuse me, this afternoon, this information that he's gleaned from the discussions all came from the different forums. So it was parents, it was community members, it was stakeholders, it was teachers, administrators, board members, all the various groups that he was able to hit. And I think he had mentioned this morning that he was able to get over 500 different pieces of data from various sources and also our online survey to kind of help gather some of the information that's on the document here. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Mr. DeMauro for introductions, and then also if I missed any information, he can feel free to add additional stuff in as well.
Thanks, Justin. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your time and having me back, and I'm very sorry that we couldn't do this in person. I think as it happened, the week that I was supposed to be in town was the actually the week that schools ended up being closed. We had our administrator session and our board meeting scheduled on that same day, and here we are. So again, it's much appreciated that I'm able to share some of these results with you. As Mr. Firks indicated, the entire community engagement phase has been completed. We held a bunch of focus groups when I was in town, obviously with the board and with the administrative team. Spoke with a lot of teachers, spoke with a lot of students. We had a community leaders lunch and forum. We had some senior citizen community engagement, and we did very, very well on both our online community survey and then our online staff survey. Again, in an attempt to kind of glean as much information about the districts, its strengths, its weaknesses, all the opportunities that lie before you all. And what we do is we take all of that data, we take it back to the shop. We have a team of about 7 folks that work with me on strategic planning for school districts and for municipalities all over Ohio. And we pour through that data and we attempt to extract commonalities that are represented among all of those stakeholder groups. And we attempt to extract themes and things that tend to rise to the top of conversation, no matter what focus group area. Once we have identified those themes, we attempt to put them into what we call buckets, which eventually become goal areas. Those goals are represented on the document that I've shared with Justin, who I believe has shared with the board. We have 6 identified goal areas. They range from communication to facilities to finance to culture and climate, academic achievement. All of those goal areas are then represented with actionable objectives and steps. The pieces that we are suggesting based on that feedback, the district leadership walk through and attempt to achieve in a timely fashion over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. Our work this afternoon with the administrative team was to assign point persons and timeframes to all of those goals and objectives so that when we make our document community facing and public, it will be easy for all of your stakeholders to follow the goals, the objectives, the action steps that we are attempting to meet, the person who's responsible for harnessing all of that work, and the date that the community can expect to see them completed. That's not to say that strategic plans don't change. We like to refer to ours as evergreen documents. Things will change. Global pandemics do happen. I hope we're not in a scenario like this ever again. But should school funding change? Should academic programming change? State standards might change over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. The document can and will change with them. So all of that being said, we believe we've created a very much an actionable document that should make sense, that is very much the community's plan. I'd be welcome to take any, I would welcome any questions from you and inside any of those goal areas. If there's things that are confusing to you that need to be spelled out a little bit deeper, if you're questioning how we arrived at any of these ideas via that feedback, I'd be more than happy to shed some light on that and also offer, as Justin noted, some best practice examples of districts that we've planned for across Ohio. We're currently involved with 14 school districts, from Dayton to Toledo to Columbus to up here in Northeast Ohio, where I'm coming to you from Canton. So we've seen a lot with districts that look like you, others that don't look like you in terms of their planning. If you're curious to what other folks are doing during the pandemic, I'd be happy to shed some light on those things as well.
Sir, this is Jacob. My question in regard to the overall objectives, just looking at them, I find it hard to place where we're managing financial, our finances, or managing the growth in our strategic plan. So I was trying to figure out how those two elements fell into this plan.
Okay, so sorry, Jacob, are you referring to community growth?
I was referring to the student growth.
Yeah.
That is also community growth, yes.
Sure. So in the facility section, what we heard a lot, probably the most resounding thing that we heard from all of your stakeholders, obviously, is a concern of growth. It's a concern of overcrowding as it pertains to the buildings, the facilities, et cetera. So I'll point to a couple of areas inside of the document. In the facility section, we point to the creation of a master facilities plan, which I know is up and running, and speaking with Justin. So we simply strategically, from the 10,000 foot view, are going to rely on your master facilities plan, obviously, to speak to the facilities component of your growth. We've also included in here, in that same, I believe that same facilities section, objective number 3, establishing baseline strategies to forecast continued district growth. We had a long discussion about that this afternoon. The idea of engaging consistent consultants and professionals. We're going through a census right now. We're doing a lot of conversations with our partner districts, what that census will mean, both for school funding, for facilities usage, et cetera. So what we've established, I think, at least in the tenets of the plan, is not only to establish a strategy for where you were currently at with your current facilities needs, we also have an objective that points to continued, ongoing, proactive data discovery as it relates to your growth and how that will affect your finances. In the finance section, we do include some language about the consistent discussion of levy cycles, what those will mean, and being able to spell out if a bond issue is necessary for your community, being able to spell out not just the 2 to 3 years where we know growth has occurred and we know facilities discussions are taking place with your community, but even beyond that, even at the 5 to 7 to 10 year clip, where if that growth is going to be consistent and extended, you'll have the data to back up the finance asks that you're going to engage your community with. Does that answer your question, Jacob?
For sure. And the fact that I realized that there was more than one page with that document that Mr. Firk sent, where I see where there's a whole everything I just asked. Thank you as well. Great explanation.
I'm glad that you see it. Thank you.
Chris, this
So
is.
are we,
Go ahead, Julie.
I was just gonna ask, are we gonna go through the document, or we just going around the table and making comments, or how are we gonna do this?
However you would like to do it, Julie, I'm completely comfortable either way. I didn't want to read to you folks, but if we would like to go page by page and do questions, or if we would just like to extract questions, I'm open to either.
Well,
If
the
it
only
helps,
thing I'm thinking about,
if it helps for information's sake, as an administrative team, so we had all of our administrators and our supervisors, so we probably had 10 of us on. We actually went through item by item.
We did.
I think that would be good, because then we can kind of all say everything we need to say about that and then move to the next one.
Okay, we can absolutely do that. Everyone have the document in front, either on screen or on paper? On the phone? All right.
Yes.
Yes.
There we go. Thanks, Brennan. So goal one, we heard a lot about communication. We chose to create a kind of a dual template for communication and discussion of both the way we communicate internally and externally. That first objective dealing with all forms of internal communication. The district is going to audit its current practices, develop some new expectations based on internal feedback, so that we can ensure all district employees are having same page conversations, and that they're up to date and understand district initiatives, board vision, all of those things consistently. Objective number 2 inside of that.
Wait, hold on a second. Wait, hold on. So let me just ask a general question first. So all these things almost result in some kind of a plan or another, right? Something's going to come out of it, some action. So are those separate to this document? And
No,
they're going to be.
That's what you're looking at. So the objective 1, developing clear systems of internal communication, enhancing methods and frequency of communication. And then there's the steps that we are going to take to make sure that we can reach that objective. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to audit the way that we're currently.
Right. I understand the steps. What I'm saying is, when you get to that part that says design new internal communications protocol, that's a document somewhere, right?
Exactly.
Does it become part of this plan, or is it something that's referenced from this plan?
That's a great question. That's something that's referenced from the plan. All districts choose to do this differently. If and when the board chooses to provide public updates as to the progress of the document, maybe that's something you could share at a board meeting, or Mr. Ferks can share out during that measurement and tracking of success. We're going to do that annually every May for this particular objective that was decided this afternoon. Perhaps that's something that he can give as part of a board update as well.
Okay, and then another generic question I had was, we have measure and track success as the last step of all of them.
Correct.
But we need to have data points or key performance indicators listed in order to measure and track that success, because we don't want it to be, subjective to people just saying, oh yeah, we did that, this is good.
Sure. And I think
usually there's a column for, what the measurement criteria would be.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. And we are going to put that in the hands of the administrator that was assigned each of these objectives this afternoon. So for example, Jody is going to handle objective 1, internal communication. And during that measurement and tracking of success, based on what's created as part of number 3, designing that new protocol, she will be able to benchmark, like you noted, what are the specific measurement tools that we're going to use to say, A, yes, this is working, or B, no, it's not. Is it a simple staff survey at the end of every year? Do you feel updated? Are our chosen methods of communicating with you, are they working? Are they viable? What can we do better? So I think you will see inside of each of these eventually, as we begin to kind of move through them, you will see an absolute data quantifiable, for most of them, a system of measurement.
So we're not putting the criteria for each of these and doing measuring it and how we're going to measure it.
You can add it to the plan. For example, I think objective 1 is a good example. I don't know right now if we can put a quantifiable data point, because we have yet to design our new system of internal communication. if during this process our staff members are saying we would appreciate an internal staff newsletter weekly, we would appreciate a digital calendar. I'm not exactly sure what staff members will say, other than it was noted in the feedback, the initial feedback, that the current forms of internal communication can be inconsistent at times based on building and based on department. So some teachers felt like communication was great in their building. Perhaps custodial maintenance or transportation is saying they don't feel as engaged as teaching staff. So as the administrative team begins to work the process located in objective 1, they'll be able to, again, design some of those new processes and in turn, I think, create the data points that speak to whether they're working or not. At that point, I think you could easily add them under number 5. So again, they're public and there's a form of measurement and you can report that publicly.
Chris, this is Jacob. Real quick, overarching on the document, we see, what typical schools would do with their Board of Education, right? Our initial role was providing our overall guidance.
Sure.
Second, now that we have this draft goals and objectives, is really saying that we agree that those goals are in line with our values as a board.
Correct.
How the objectives are achieved and measured would be provided by Mr. Firks through the program of these assigned goals and objectives. And so, am I correct in that?
Absolutely. Universally, it's been our experience almost 100% of the time. The board is empowering district administration that the current plan, A, matches the vision of the district, B, was provided a context, a voice of the community, essentially, and C, I think can be implemented with fiduciary transparency and all of the things that go along with creating a strategic plan. It would have been very easy for any school district to say, hey, we're gonna build new buildings, we're gonna get brand new curriculum and buy every kid a computer. Everyone would like to put that in their strategic plan. But again, to your point, I think, Jacob, is it's vetted by the community, it's driven by the community, and I think the administration then puts the pieces to the ground. And as I noted when I started, we'll have the flexibility to move and shift as things change, to be able to say, this particular objective is no longer meaningful to us, or something has happened in the district that we currently don't have a plan for, and it needs to be added to our master strategic plan so that our community knows that it's important to us.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's a great explanation. I was just making sure that we're falling in line. So our goal here is to approve of the primary goals, to ensure they're in alignment with what we've been told by the community, the direction of the board with the school, and we put our the focus and energy to the administrators that's assigned to really show us their measurement and tracking and what it success, and they should be presenting that to the board. It shouldn't be us deciding how they're going to accomplish those objectives, or us deciding what is the grading scale of their objective. So
correct. One of the things that we challenge our administrators to do during planning is to, in collaboration with the board, create a system where we would suggest quarterly. The superintendent provide a quarterly, 10-minute, whatever it might be, strategic plan update, so that all of the action items that were supposed to happen that quarter can, again, in complete transparency to the public who inform this plan, can get a sense of where we're at, and also can provide the board with some semblance of management in terms of, hey, we said we were going to tackle these items in this strategic fashion, and either A, it's happening, or B, it's not. So I think in that sense, it continues to be an actionable document throughout the life of the plan.
Copy that. And I think that's where we would say, right, what is it not being accomplished because there's a resource need, there's a technical need, you not have the right tools, exactly. And that's where we can engage to ensure that they have that.
I would agree.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, if we want to move through to part 2 of communication, heard a lot about the desired collaboration between the district and the community, service clubs, service organizations, nonprofits, community-based foundations, all for the benefit of Bethel students. And that is quantified in objective number 2. We're really going to take a tried and true look at partnerships and placing the district as a community hub. Objective number 3 inside of communications speaks to your external communications program. It kind of is the antithesis of objective 1. Objective 1 was all about the way we communicate internally. Objective 3 is all about how we're going to communicate to external stakeholders, the channels that you're going to use, the consistency at which you're going to communicate with those folks, and how you're going to create a targeted message for different audiences. Objective 4.
So on 3, one of the steps would be to publish or publicize the communication channels.
Correct.
Is that detail that goes in the plan? There's no plan in this one. It's well, I don't know. I guess the communications protocol.
So yeah, again, good question. Again, step 1, we're going to take a peek at how we are currently communicating externally, whether that's Facebook, whether that's phone blast, email, newsletter printed and sent to the mailbox. We're going to utilize some stakeholder feedback, again, inside of individual subsections. Senior citizens are not going to want to communicate with you via Instagram. However, your young mothers and fathers are going to look to Instagram for school-based photo, video, possibly updates, etc.
Right, I understand. What I was asking was, like, right now there's, we have Facebook, we have the website. Mm-hmm. I think we have some Twitter things, but sure, nowhere can you go and it says, here's where you should be looking to find out information.
Yes, that is all goal 3. When we design new external communications protocol in goal 3. So for example, if the impact group were running Bethel Local Schools external communication program, your community would know where to find information and what sorts of information they're going to find on each of those channels. So for example, we might utilize the website for a longer, more extensive message, where we're going to utilize Facebook. If you want the 30-second version and the 6 bullet points, that's where you'll find it. And organically allow your information seekers to really kind of curate where they want to find information. And our success in having kind of that ability for the community to curate, I think, is very beneficial. You're not locked into one channel, and it provides the district some freedom to kind of really kind of get creative with what we're offering in terms of your value.
I'm with you on that. I just want to make sure that there's some place where it's going to get publicized eventually.
Absolutely. I absolutely
because
think
this one doesn't. Is the protocol here a plan? Is that going to be a document?
It can be. Districts choose to do this differently. Districts that have, I would say, an above average to an excellent communications program. Perhaps they have a communications director or they work with an outside group like we do. Yes, we would publish brand standards guides. We would publish communication guides. All of that would be readily available as part of step number 3. So again, as part of a board update down the road, that perhaps could be a challenge to the administrative team that, it is part of the board's wishes that is a very public facing document so that the public 100% knows where to head for their information.
Okay.
Part 4 is, it speaks to alumni outreach. Again, it's another component that we heard a lot of as we spoke with district stakeholders. We're going to design a comprehensive system to begin alumni outreach, which includes the building of databases. We know that there is an alumni association. We're not sure how closely they are linked to the district. We're going to join and combine forces to make sure that things as simple as our current graduating class of 2020, we're going to get emails, we're going to get phone numbers, we're going to be able to engage those kids to learn about success a couple of years down the road when they're doing great things on the job site or at school or in the military, we're going to be able to reach out to them and invite them back and make them part of school functions and have a homecoming barbecue and do all the great things that you can do when you have a strong alumni list. So Barrett's going to be our point person on that. Who's very excited about that this afternoon. Number 5, I know some of this work has already started, so congratulations. We were able to take some credit for some good work that's already been done. Number 5 speaks to establishment of brand standards, the colors of your jerseys and the t-shirts in your community, and the way that you're going to message all is discussed and described in number 5. And again, all of that's going to work to reinforce your mission and your vision so that there is some consistency in the way that we communicate, so that the administrative team has been trained, so to speak, on saying the same thing to your community. It's very, very difficult when your high school principal and your elementary school principal communicate on different channels with different mediums in different ways. So now I think your community will be able to see some tightening of that communications program via objective number 5. Okay, we want to move on. Goal 2 was facilities, safety, and security. Objective 1 is the Whopper. Oftentimes boards ask me to extract the people.
Sorry, can we just go back 1 second to communications?
Sure can.
Wait a second. I think, so we had a, hold on, I'm paging back up through it. I had a note at the end, so I'm just going back to,
Sure.
So item 4, for the alumni outreach.
Okay.
Did we talk about that one? So
Yes.
it's specifically, we've listed internal communications, external, alumni, but we didn't list the booster organizations anywhere.
Okay.
Are they going to be included somewhere? Do they need a bullet, or is it implied in the?
That's a good question. I would consider, and again, this is probably a greater decision based there locally. I would consider your booster organizations part of your internal communications system. Those are folks that work on your behalf, on the behalf of kids. And I think that via that internal system of communication, we can have booster club presidents, treasurers, etc. Those folks be included in your system of internal communication, again, when it's appropriate, so that they're receiving the same information perhaps too that your coaches are receiving and your club advisors that might not be there on campus all day. Those are folks that deserve to have information, and we can inside of this plan include them as part of that first bullet point in communications.
Chris and Julie, this is Jacob. I really saw that in the objective 2 of our overall strategy of 1.
Well, I kind of thought that too, Jacob, but that's what I was just asking, because everything else is kind of explicitly listed, but they weren't. So 1, we don't want them to feel left out in any way.
Sure.
And we don't want them to get overlooked, right? So that's the only reason I was asking, because I kind of felt like it was kind of a number 2 thing too.
We can add them if you want me to add boosters inside of that goal narrative. So we could say, partnerships with team with civic service organizations, booster clubs, etc.
Mm-hmm. Or put district support organizations. That would be the better term for our school.
Okay.
And I was super excited to see the alumni separated out with clear goals. We've known we have a weakness there, not a good way to get all that information together. So I'm super excited to see that. Excellent. And Chris, can you explain a little bit, because this is a new term, at least probably to most of us, or at least it was to me. I did a little research today, but what do you mean by the 333 message?
We got that question this afternoon. So 333 is a proprietary messaging philosophy that we utilize as a firm. Very quickly, it's the idea that 85% of folks are going to give you, God help us, 3 seconds to understand a complicated message. And this is why Nike says, just do it, and why Apple says, think differently. 10% of folks give you 30 seconds to understand a complicated message. That's 6 bullet points. That's it. That's what you get on your political mail. 5% of folks give you 3 minutes to understand a complicated message. The problem with schools, and this is a former school administrator, principal, and superintendent speaking, I was always the dummy that led with the 3-minute message because I wanted to put all that information out there and be transparent and hope that our community could buy into it. Except 85% of those folks looked at that postcard and said, I'm not reading that. And they threw it in the garbage. So what we want Bethel to be readily recognized, I'm not sure if it's a quick three-second tagline. I'm not sure if it's Bethel Schools, empowered, committed excellence. I don't know what your tagline is going to be as this unfolds. Should probably have some board input in that. But what we want is to plaster it absolutely everywhere. When you see an impact group document, probably the one you're holding at the top, it says think, create, excite. It is on everything. It's on my email signature. It's on my business card. It's on everything we send out. It's on our folders. It's on our literature. It's everywhere. It's on our PowerPoint templates. So we want you to consider something similar so that if an unassuming community member knows nothing else about Bethel Local Schools, they'll be able to say committed, empowered, achievement. And again, I'm just throwing that off the top of my head. That's the idea there. We're going to know when and why to use either 3, 30, or 3.
Great, thank you. Thank you. That helped.
Awesome. Facilities goal. Objective number 1 is the Whopper. It was the biggest feedback point that I was able to achieve for all of you. If you were to ask me what's the biggest thing you heard from our community, I heard a lot about facilities in the context of overcrowding. I know that there's a ton of work that has already been done in terms of master facilities planning with the OFCC. We're simply validating that work and its importance as part of your 5-year strategic plan here with Objective 1, which discusses the development of a master facilities plan to give kids a space that is interactive, engaging, and built with learning in mind. And then again, it takes you through the steps, some of which have already been started. I know that as of our conversations this afternoon. Bullet point number 2 is the creation.
Wait, hold on.
Sure.
Hold on, I have some questions. So one is there's no mention of the facilities committee. We have engaged a professional consultant. I'm not sure these need to be in here. And this is kind of to this point is that's an implementation kind of thing.
Our engagement of the professional consultant would be your current contract with Levin Porter to serve as your master facilities plan architect.
Right, I understand, but you wouldn't normally, I mean, we only know that we did that because it's already done, right? I mean, that's a detail.
That is correct. And if you would look at, 1 through 7 under here, a lot of these are being done currently. So, I mean, we are in the process of engaging our community to form our plan. We are holding community facility committee engagement meetings. We're developing a comprehensive plan based off our survey feedback.
I understand, but okay.
So, I mean, I think what you're going to find through some of this is kudos to us. Some of these things, like in regards to the branding guidelines, we're ahead of the game. We've got that done. So that's one that we can put a feather in our cap and check off the list. So
I would agree.
Right, but so I guess what I'm saying is, so let's take hiring the superintendent as an example, right? We hired somebody to help us with that as well. But if I was writing a strategic plan for that, that would probably not be a step in the plan, right? That's a decision we made at the time. It wasn't a strategic goal to hire somebody. The strategic goal is to hire the superintendent. So this is almost like the point of you're writing the plan by saying this. If that made any sense. And if we're engaging a professional consultant as a step, why are we not mentioning the facilities committee?
I think, Julie, the facilities committee is a long-standing committee. We don't have finance committee or the labor management committee listed, as those are stakeholders in the way that we're managing business as a board and not as a portion of a strategic plan. If
right, but that's what I'm saying about this. This is you're managing the business through Okay, that's fine.
One of the ways that we would encourage you sometimes to look at this, sometimes it's very hard as a board member because you're so intimately involved. Imagine looking at the plan from a complete layperson's vantage point, just a taxpayer that's interested in learning the direction or the future of the district when they're trying to make
I am looking at that from that point of view. That's exactly the
decision.
point of view I'm looking at it as. So
Okay.
as a community member, I would want to see in here that, yes, we have a facilities committee.
Okay. We can add a step.
But Chris and Julie, that's a tactical item and not part of the major strategic plan. Look
And
at
so
it
is
from
engaging
the
professional
global view.
consultants.
Go to a 10,000-foot view. We would say as a 10,000-foot view that we would engage a professional consultant because we aren't the people that would do that, nor is our staff.
I disagree. It's the same thing to me. They're both tactical.
Want to reflect on that a little bit? We can obviously come back to it before we make anything final.
No, I mean, I get what we're doing here, but I don't see where I hear Julie's opinion, but I don't, obviously we both don't agree to that opinion. So, but we can move on before we would solidify it so we can talk further. Not to hold you, Chris.
I mean, I hear Julie's opinion too, but let me ask you, will the facilities committee exist after our facilities are built?
Don't know.
The finance committee will, yes?
So
Yes.
So
Yeah, I
I think
mean,
that's
they
the
could.
decision. I don't see why it wouldn't, because it's going to be this process for a long time. Like phase 2 won't be for a long time, so presumably it would still be around. I mean, strategic plan,
well, I mean,
same idea.
I mean,
So
they can be argued either way, but part of our strategy for this whole facilities thing was to establish a facilities committee. Right, just as you brought up the finance, good point. Same thing. We wanted to establish a finance committee.
but I don't know but that wasn't strategic necessarily. I think that was just a part of operational business. That's not it's not the same goal. It didn't have the same goal in mind. It was just to help the board do its business in a different way. It was just as a way to help the board accomplish its business. It's more of a board function as opposed to a strategic function. So I just don't think it goes here. That's all.
Yeah, I thought it was a great point, Lido, to paraphrase it in that way.
It's okay if some of our goals that are listed here are already complete, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not arguing
just
that,
like the
Annie.
branding.
I'm glad some of them are complete. I think this is an implementation item, engaging a professional consultant.
Well, Julie, I'm sure Chris in the impact group, he just said they're working with 14 schools, and I'm sure they've done many, many strategic plans. So they didn't reinvent the wheel for us. They scoped it for us, but they didn't create it from scratch. So they have the expertise we don't.
I would argue, again, 10,000-foot layman's perspective, if my district, if the possibility even down the road existed, and I know we haven't got quite there yet at Bethel, that a bond issue is going to be potentially on the table and my money is going to be on the table, I'm going to want to know that the district has engaged professionals to help guide a very, very complicated process, whether it's OFCC, because, again, having worked that process, it's very complicated. It's very convoluted. I think it's somewhat reassuring, but I do also agree that it's reassuring that you all had the wherewithal to engage a community committee. We tried to recognize that in bullet points number 2 and 3, the fact that you were public and transparent as part of this process to the best of your ability, and that if folks wanted to show up to say, hey, this is a waste of time, or hey, we can't wait to get this done, you've reflected that in your document. Objective 2, if we could move on, the creation and implementation.
So wait, one other question about objective 1. So what about the scope of the plan and as far as a time frame goes? Who sets the vision for that?
Per our discussion this afternoon, and Justin, I'm going to lean on you a little bit here. We looked at item number 6 under steps, the implementation of the plan. We gave our best guess kind of based on OFCC movement and where you all might fall on their chain. And Justin, can you kind of provide some of that dialogue we had this afternoon?
Well, obviously, you know, the first phase, we're engaged currently with the ELP process, hoping that we can fund the first phase of our project with the capital improvements project fund and also the money that we're receiving from TIF and certificates of participation and borrowing on the debt to be able to complete whatever project that might entail, in hopes that in 5 to 7 years, when our number is called from the OFCC with the CFAP portion of the project, that the that project is either going to be done on our own again, if we can afford it, or we're going to have to look at accepting money and maybe paying the other portion on our end, or looking at some sort of a bond issue, although I think we would all prefer not to. So the idea behind the facilities is that we are looking at the immediate for next year. So we've addressed space concerns for next year. We're trying to get in that mid-range with the potential project that's going to hopefully break ground next year. And then potentially when that finishes, have another project in the loop or beginning, so that, you know, you're looking at the next year of design process to potentially 7, 8, 9 years out, you're going to have construction going on in the district.
Yeah, so that's not exactly what I was asking. I understand all that, but as you guys know, I have concerns over the fact that we are not looking long-term down the road. And I'm not talking 5, 10 years. I'm talking 20, 30, 40 years. Like, where's the plan that's going to look at that, about where the school wants to be?
Having been a part of this process before, I would think that this is going to come. That's going to come out of your master facilities project that's currently being developed with the architect that has been hired and the community engagement process that's currently in taking place. I think part of that project has to be long-term facilities planning embedded within that.
So you expect that to come out and be part of this plan here?
We are currently working on strategic. That would be, I would think, also in the master facilities plan that Levin Porter is currently in the process of developing.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is,
because they're going to plan based on the feedback they get from the community, where are viable options to place these schools. If it ends up being LFIs and ends up being new ball fields or a new auditorium or a new this or that, where is that going to be located? And so what land do we have? What does the community feel is the best location for that to be located? And then that's going to kind of build your campus out for the next X number of years based on board input, community input, and what's best for the district as far as the opportunities that we have available with the dollar amount, and also what the OFCC within their guidelines and Ohio Design Manual is going to allow us to construct. So
okay,
I would think a master facilities plan is going to help build out. I don't know if I've ever been involved in, but I don't know if I've ever been involved in a district that's had a master facilities plan 40 years out, because I have no idea what the district's going to look like then.
Well, maybe not. And maybe
I might not even be alive in 40 years. So it's hard. I'd be 81. So, I don't know what Bethel's going to look like. I wish I did. I really do. And I understand what you're saying, but I don't know how any of us can predict that. FutureThink was only willing to do enrollment for 10 years, and we have concerns about that. So to be able to say what Bethel's going to look like in 30 or 40 years, I don't know if that's possible, unfortunately.
Well, I'm not saying it would probably turn out that way, but I'm saying that there should be some kind of a vision, right? Just as when a community planner plans the community for years and years to come, not just the next few years. And because we have all this land and all the things that you just mentioned, that's more of a reason for us to have a long-term vision. And yeah, maybe it changes down the road, but at least somebody would have the intention of why we did the things we're doing now, because this is what we, predicted the future would look like.
Well, I mean, if you would like, I can make sure that Mike and Mark most certainly address that in upcoming discussions that we have, and also in upcoming meetings.
Okay, well, that's what I was
Chris,
asking. So,
if I may, Chris,
Sure.
So strategic plans, I know they're common, like they're a big thing, and boards are all supposed to do them, but they're also kind of like a 3 to 5 year thing, right? Like, how often are we supposed to re-examine those?
We have been recommending to all of our partner districts exactly what you just said. The life of the plan tends to be 3 years now. And if you really want to stretch and really want to get granular inside of these objective areas, we would say 5 years at a max. It used to be, gosh, even 5 to 7 years ago, you would see districts with 7 and 10 year strategic plans. But the academic landscape, the needs of kids and families, just think over the course of the last 7 years, we're talking about now providing kids with social workers and mental health, things that 10 years ago were invisible in schools. So to say any longer than 5, I think is a stretch.
Right. I mean, I remember in the corporate world back in that life that I used to have a long time ago, it was more of a 7 to 10 kind of thing. But in education, everything's 3 to 5 max, maybe 4 if you're lucky. Really so, I mean, this is going to be an ongoing process. We're going to do this one. We're going to accomplish these goals. And then we're going to do another one, and we're going to have new goals, and we're going to move ahead. And we're going to do this cycle again and again and again. And I think that's what everyone in the community can get their cap set for and expect, that it's something that we do to be functional, give our district goals to accomplish, know that we're doing everything we need to do to stay on top of things. And that's how this is going to move forward. And that's the idea. Yes.
Yes. Some of these goals and objectives will follow you into your next plan. Many of them will. We're working on a plan right now. It's the second iteration for Chagrin Falls schools in Cleveland. And many of their same objectives are carrying over because they made a ton of progress and they like what they see. And so they're going to continue. They're just simply reflecting it in the next iteration of that same plan. Other things are absolutely changing.
I looked at 5 Ohio school strategic plans today, and most of them are 5 years, but they also have a yearly update in their website as well.
That's a great point.
So Light,
go ahead.
So Light, the reason I was asking was kind of because of what you just said. If it's a 3 to 5 year plan, that's what I was saying, would a long-term vision like that be part of the master facilities plan, which is this bullet, or is there a separate bullet for that to say we need some kind of vision that looks out more than 5 or 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of, in my mind, I think we're sort of just mixing apples and oranges a little bit. I think that our master facilities plan is just its own totally separate entity, and we need to kind of keep them in their own baskets,
Agreed.
Yes, I agree as well. Go ahead, Julie.
So the bullet, though, is this particular bullet, objective 1, right, is to talk about this master facilities plan that seems to be more of a 5 to 10 year plan. Right. So my question was, so that's why I was asking, is a longer term vision part of this plan, or is it a separate thing that needs to be developed and, as Lyda said, reviewed every so often?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'll be reviewing this and the master facilities plan, especially since when we switch out of the ELP into the next program. But instead of looking at the steps that they provided as a guide, I focus more on objective 1, which was utilize community engagement and available professional resources, develop a master facilities plan, provide facilities that maximizes student interaction and engagement in learning. So that doesn't mean building a new school or a master project like we're working on our master facilities plan. It plays a portion of it, but this could also fall in line with reevaluating current space that we have so that it maximizes student interaction. It has nothing to do 100% with building, but working with a professional will help us evaluate those spaces and ensure we're in compliance with not only OFCC, but Ohio facility codes.
For the board's edification as well, we have probably 50% of our districts, this is a local choice, choose when we create the community facing fancy version of this, and it looks nice and it's branded and it has all the photos and the bells and the whistles. Several districts don't choose to publicly publish their steps. They will only publish goal and objective. And the actual granular steps are only for board and administration, similar to the administrative guidelines in your board policy.
And that's actually what,
oftentimes those aren't public.
that's what I saw in the ones in the plans that I saw today.
Sure.
There's nothing fine. It's all pretty general.
Correct.
Is that so if things change, people don't come back and be like, look, you said you were going to make the bricks tan and you made the bricks.
Sure, it is. And I think there's, you know, you can often, people would like to, I suppose, create a better system of steps that they think is better suited, and they're not privy to the information that you are as board members, or certainly that the administrators are on the ground floor. So again, if I were to personally do it, I would be publishing to my community our goals and our objectives that they've helped contribute to. And I would leave the particular action steps to be board and administrative conversation.
And a report on all those steps would be our annual report. And that would be
Absolutely.
the status of how we are
Yep.
meeting our goals and each one of the objectives and where we're at in progress of this 3 to 5 year plan.
Correct.
Got it.
Objective 2 under facilities is the implementation of an equipment replacement and deferred maintenance schedule. That's a simple auditing of where we're currently at with all of the things that the district owns and when they need to be replaced. And again, within the confines of your financial picture, what is the triage or the economy, so to speak, of what you want to point financial resources to and why and in what order. It's a step that many districts know that they need to take. We heard that from some engagement with your support staff mostly. And this is things like district vehicles, trucks, and tools, and all the things that, you know, we don't really think about when we think about schools, but those things deserve to be on a replacement schedule as well. And that's objective number 2. Objective number 3 is the establishment of strategies to continue to be proactive and forecasting district growth and its effect on facilities. This is the consistent studying of data, whether it's with professionals, consultants, or whether it's simply by looking at census data, looking at district growth trends via the ODE information that's available to us, but doing so in more of a long-term scope to be consistently able to discuss with the community your needs in terms of facilities, finances, textbooks, computers, the idea that we always know what's going to be needed at a certain clip of time because we've studied and been proactive with looking at things like overcrowding, et cetera. Bullet point.
So this is my same question here where it says engage professional consultants. Mm-hmm. That's an actual, it's not strategic. But the board would decide at the time, right?
Yeah, Julie, so you're right. That is not strategic because he's showing us the tactical elements to complete the strategic goals. Mm-hmm. So you're reviewing the tactical items as well as the strategic.
Okay, so 10 minutes ago, you made that argument. I just repeated the words back to you that you made the argument to me to not have facilities committee in there.
Correct.
I mean, this is, so I don't know. I guess I'm.
No, what I was saying was you said this looked tactical, and so I was reassessing. We are seeing the tactical elements as well as the strategic. So the steps are the tactical elements that could be used as a guide for whoever's assigned this overall objective and goal. He's giving
right, but this is a very specific one, right? This should be part of the decision at the time, like the plan. Because who knows if the board would do this at the time? This is somebody you're going to pay for, right?
Okay. So I got to be honest with you guys. When I went through this, I read the objectives like the Roman numeral things, And I glanced at like the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like the whole facilities and engaged consultants. I glanced at that, but to me, that is like a Justin and a Brennan decision. That's a district level decision. And to get involved in whether or not they're going to recommend that we engage a consultant, to me, that's micromanaging them and their administrative decisions. And I didn't even look at that.
I agree 100%, and that's why it shouldn't be in here. That's exactly why it should not be in here.
But I think it needs to be in there because it's a guide for them as well. This document is multi-purpose. It's not specifically just for us. It serves many different people within our district. I just think that we don't necessarily need to nitty-gritty read every single line of it because it does help other people. It doesn't mean we need to have a say in every single line of it. We're more looking at the 1, 2s, and 3s Roman numerals and seeing how we feel about the overarching objectives. That's how I read it. If you guys agree, that's great. If you don't, that's fine, but that's how I looked at it.
That's how I'm looking at it as well.
Ready to move to bullet point 4 is safety and security through and through. It's your acknowledgement to the community that you're going to continue to review every aspect of physical security, continue to make policy recommendations, again, based on best practice, things that that change throughout the years, things that we learn about, you know, the mental health and welfare of students and target hardening and all the things that nobody likes to talk about because they're uncomfortable and we hope we never have to deal with them. But this is the district's due diligence in assuring that its security practices and protocols are up to date and that that best practices are being utilized all the time. And the final Roman numeral inside of facilities is to analyze and prioritize the needs of district athletic facilities as part of a comprehensive plan. This deserves some explanation. We felt it necessary after listening to your community. There were enough folks that made the distinction between school buildings and athletic facilities that we really felt to align with what we heard from the community that they deserve to be two separate items. When folks mention facilities at Bethel, they 100% quantify school building and stadium or ball field or weight room or whatever it might be in terms of their discussion of the facilities and improvements in facilities, which is why you see that as a separate Roman numeral from the master facilities plan. We know that they're similar, and I think that can be a board and administrative decision should you decide to blend them. But again, in honoring the feedback that we heard, I think your community wants updates and have an understanding of both academic facilities as well as athletic facilities.
Chris, just to kind of add some additional thoughts to that number, with our planning process for our upcoming forum, which to the board, Mike and Mark said we should have the questions by tomorrow so that I can send to you. Part of our discussions in our upcoming community forum will include LFIs, and they will also talk significantly about those kind of things, athletic facilities, auditoriums, and those type of things. So, I mean, obviously it's shown up in previous discussions, and it's probably going to continue to be talked about as we go through the master facilities project. So I can see it having its own. I think, you know, there was a lot of discussion in the past from, you know, previous site plans and wishing that we had some updated facilities. So I think I'm fine with it unless the board sees differently.
Well, my only question would be, do we want to add an auditorium, or was there not that need when you did the survey, Chris? I mean, we can always add it later, but if this is the strategic plan and we don't put it in there, yeah. I don't know.
No, certainly good question, Lori. Certainly the distinction was athletic facilities in particular. Okay.
Maybe because there's already a new stage in the new building, which I don't think is so great, but and also because auditoriums are so expensive.
True.
Well, and I think the community probably wants athletics next, and then maybe we can look at an auditorium. I mean, I definitely think the auditorium is probably on the 10-year plan rather than the 2 or 3
No
plan.
doubt.
So, yeah.
But we can also garnish that both of these pieces in that master's facilities plan, so that we know in 10 years or 15 years when the community is ready for that, we already know where it's going to go, how's it going to fit into the master plan, so as well.
Goal number 3 covers culture, climate, and wellness. Objective 1 deals with student ease and access of availability to school counselors, mental health professionals, and also the ability to communicate those resources to our families. Unfortunately, this is an objective that appears in many school strategic plans these days, probably 100%. Making sure that we're taking care of students' non-academic needs in an appropriate way, and making sure that the personnel is available to assist our families with support resources. So that is all encompassing in objective number 1. Objective 2 deals with extended supports for students in need. And this can be, again, multifaceted: mental health, wellness. The distinction between objective 1 and 2 being 1, the process that walks a student from having a problem to getting to a trained professional. 2, being abundance of resources that are available, whether it's well-trained staff members, whether it's administrators that have multi-tiers of training in terms of making sure that students and families have the resources they need, the district doing its due diligence. Many of our districts, as part of bullet point number 2, now offer, and I'm sure you've heard and you probably do, the backpack food over the weekend. Many districts have programs and plans now in place where students leave on Friday with a backpack full of food, because they're just not sure when the next meal is going to come until Monday morning when they come back to school and have breakfast. So that's kind of a simple idea that can be infused as part of that second objective under culture and climate. Objective number 3 deals with diversity. We heard this a lot in our community forums. Creation of an atmosphere that respects, embraces, and responds to differences in individuals, promotes global perspectives, and all of those things. Item number 4, implementation of a balanced approach to whole child development. This comes up very often. This is the idea that the district take a whole child approach and begin conversations about balance. In an age of academic achievement and standards, oftentimes kids, and I'm sure you've seen it as board members, they run themselves ragged, trying to obtain the 4.3 and the 3 sports and the 5 clubs, because, you know, it's either Harvard or Columbia, and I'm not satisfied if those aren't the options. And so bullet point 4 is the district engaging in meaningful and purposeful conversation with families early on about holistic balance, and that K-12 education is about academic achievement, certainly, but it's about growth and socializing and being well and making friends and doing all of those things too. So it's your commitment to create holistic kids. Final bullet point in culture and climate is the providing of targeted resources to support families during building transitions. This was something that came up quite a bit in our online survey and also in our parent group. Just the struggle when students move from elementary to middle to high school. It can be difficult transitions for many kids, even in a smaller district. And so this is our nod to the development of orientation programming or programs to help students become more acclimated to a new building or new expectations at our varying levels throughout that K-12 continuum. Any questions about any of those?
I have a question about the section. Is there ever any mention of student responsibilities or, you know, consequences of actions,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like for bullying or language, or, you know,
Sure.
like to have a consistent plan?
Yeah, absolutely. It's losing me right now. I think it's in our final goal in our human resources and operations goal. There's some language about consistent application of district policy. And Julie, to your question, there was some discussion about, consistent punishments and helping kids understand consequences of actions. And I think that's where the administrators are going to choose to handle your suggestion.
Okay, because it's not explicitly mentioned in 6
Sure.
either. So that's
Correct.
kind of why I was asking. I didn't know if it went here or there. I'm with you on that.
Kudos to you, because you guys are one of the first districts I have worked with. I can honestly tell you that bullying was not a huge component of the feedback. It truly wasn't. I mean, obviously, when you hit close to 500 data points, it shows up here and there. But trust me when I say I go through data with districts where it is quite pervasive and it's on the minds of students and parents and teachers. But it was, and again, I'm not downplaying that. I think this is a celebration for the way that you as a board and the administration has chosen to attack that topic. Obviously, things are working because it wasn't a hot topic in the feedback.
Chris, this is Lori Sebastian. I didn't see this in either communication or the culture bullet. One of the things historically I think we talked about is there's sometimes been a lot of tension between different facets in our community. Sometimes it was the teachers and the administrators. There was kind of that dichotomy. The community kind of forced that when we had some contract issues.
Yep.
I don't want to say the community forced it, but it became, it just became a hot button topic. And
Sure.
then you can also look at, because we have the new section of Bethel, we have the Bethel Huber versus the traditional. How is that being addressed within this plan?
That's a great question. And there was mention in the exact terms that you utilized, Lori. I read about Old Bethel and New Bethel. And so I would point to, inside of our culture and climate goal here, let me find out, I lost my spot. I would point to
Number 3. Establish
an atmosphere that respects, embraces differences in individuals, embracing local and regional resources. I don't think it would be a bad idea, to your point, to amend that language to say something like new community members versus legacy community members. We want to say in a respectful way that there are changes within the community, and that's okay, and that we can find a way to have intelligent conversations with folks who are Bethel traditionalists and folks who are also new to town. I wouldn't be opposed to that, because I do think it validates some of the conversations that I had when I was there on campus.
Okay, great. Yeah, I would appreciate something, just because I think our relationships at Bethel are so critical, and if we start to see those deteriorate again, I'll be very sad, because it was a very difficult time to go through when we weren't all on the same page. And I think it's also for us as a board to be a unified voice as we go through the building project. There's been people that have had concerns about that, because we've got to all get on the same page and move together, not each go our own separate ways or each have an own idea. We've got to get on the same team.
Sure, I would agree. We can fit that into the language of that objective, I think, very easily.
Well, Chris and Board, this is Jacob. Something to throw out there, right, is the reason why I said number 3 was the way it was written, because it establishes an atmosphere that respects, embraces, and responds to differences in individuals and marginalizes groups. So our ultimate goal here would create an environment where there is no group of old or group of new people. We just have the group of Bethel. And so that's kind of how I read into that from my viewpoint, was we want to marginalize groups because we're all one community under Bethel Schools. So it doesn't matter if you lived here 1 year or 100 years, you're Bethel Schools.
Sure.
Maybe I looked at it too broad.
I even like that language, Jacob. I like kind of the one community, one central hub. And maybe we can be a little more explicit in pulling that out of that objective.
Well, you could almost put that right in there, right? Embrace local and regional resources to promote diversity and global perspectives, to create a one Bethel, or a Bethel, a community of one with Bethel schools.
You got it. Goal number 4 is your finance goal, which begins with objective 1, providing regular community updates on capital improvement projects and initiatives and creating easy access to financial dashboards and website updates. This is a universal goal that we utilize for many districts. Again, reaffirming your commitment to financial transparency and prudency. If taxpayers and community members want to find financial information, it is easy to do so. It's in a conspicuous place. It's not buried on that website, and it's easy to decipher. Bullet point number 2 is the creation of a projected financial assessment for future facilities needs. So this works in concert with bullet point number 1 of the facilities goal. And it is, again, the district's commitment to communicate how financing will work for building projects. It's a very confusing topic. We felt internally, our team felt that it was a large enough topic that, again, it deserved its own space inside of this finance goal, because facilities projects are about as large as any decision as any board can take on. We felt that it was prudent to again, state outwardly part of the district strategy is to educate the community on that, whether it's the bond issue process, whether it's the OFCC process. Having been through that multiple times, it can be very, very confusing to the layperson. It's very, very confusing to administrators and board members, and you guys are living it. So that is, again, your commitment to break this stuff down for the public in a way that they can digest and understand. Bullet point 3, the researching of shared service models with neighboring districts or educational service centers to find cost reduction strategies, to share resources, to respond to grant opportunities, and to investigate corporate and or in-kind donations. We're going to have point folks for all of those things to really, again, hone in on where the district can experience cost savings simply by engaging in conversations with neighbors. There's lots of ways to do that. We're going to study them in bullet point number 3. Number 4, formulation of discussions and planning of district levy cycles. This is a build out levy strategy implementation. This is the board and the administrative team having discussions about when levies will fall, perhaps making expiring levies permanent levies, looking at renewals in the face of operations funds or of bond issues. This is the strategizing of, again, the 3 to 5 to 7 years when you can look into the future and say, there's no way we as a board can have a operations ask followed by 2 renewals in 3 consecutive years. We've had districts where, there are nightmare scenarios that are created because of emergency needs maybe 2 decades ago. We have a district right now that's going to be on in the fall, and they're going to be on the following fall and the fall after that. And so having, an understanding of where your need is going to fall based on the financial picture, based on the facilities picture, is all, we attempt to speak to all of that in Roman numeral number 4. Goal number 5 is your academic achievement goal. Objective 1, ensuring equitable student access to real.
Wait, can we go back? Can we go back for a second? You didn't ask for questions on the last question.
Sorry, go for it.
So the board has talked about this before, and I think it maybe just needs to be part of number 3,
Okay.
About having a private donations or some kind of endowment plan.
Got it.
We have the corporate side in there, but not the private citizen.
You got
and
it.
I know Tip City does a good job at this, and Lori, you probably know more about it than I do. I know you've mentioned it several times.
Yeah, I think that's easily added, and it fits well inside of that objective.
Well, and that goes hand in hand with the alumni network. If you get your alumni network established, you can get all those endowments set. I mean, it's a long process, but once you start it and collect it, then you can go from there. And we just have to be careful not to step on anybody's toes. The Alumni Association, does the scholarships for the seniors. And, we just have to be careful not to be stepping on toes.
Sure. Any other questions inside of that finance category? Okay. Goal 5, academic achievement. Objective 1, ensuring equitable access to a rigorous and relevant core curriculum across disciplines that prepares students for college and/or career. This is your curriculum mapping. This is your vertical alignment. This is ensuring that all of your methods of curriculum and instruction in terms of the written curriculum that providing students, it makes sense and it aligns with state standards. Objective number 2.
So just a general comment. Can you spell out the acronyms? There's an OIP, and then the next one there's a PD, which I know they're just professionals. I mean, I know they're pretty standard, but just just common practice to spell them out the first time.
We can absolutely do that. That's an easy fix. Objective 2, providing continuing professional development opportunities to advance traditional teaching strategies, to establish district-wide best practice methods, and to begin to utilize technology not as a replacement of a piece of paper, but instead as a creation tool. So this really speaks to the pedagogical choices, the actions of teachers. So instead of, maybe the lectures that all of us were used to long ago, this is the acknowledgement that we're going to provide teachers with development to become experts, not that they're not now, but to become more of an expert in terms of what they're offering students in terms of their delivery. Bullet point 3, go ahead.
So wait, so let me ask you a question. Justin, is this only teacher related, or do we do this for any other kind of staff in the school? Like, I don't know, just for instance, would we send Missy to nutritional school?
Mm-hmm.
I guess clarify the question again, please.
I'm just asking, is this only for teachers, the professional development plans?
No, I would,
it talks about traditional teaching practices.
Well, I mean, but you also provide those educational opportunities for your building level principals so that they can bring best practice ideas to the staff in a staff meeting or at a waiver day or summer in-service. So, I mean, I think all professionals are, what's that?
I agree with you, but where would that be in here?
You mean as far as continuing professional development opportunities?
Yes.
Goal
that
6.
would be embedded within the objective. I think it's overarching. I think it deals with all groups within the district, from superintendent to principals to special education director to curriculum to gifted to classroom teacher to aides. We even talked about professional development and customer service training for principals and secretaries. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's overarching, and if you're an elite district, great school system, you're constantly providing professional development to all your groups. And oftentimes,
yeah,
I already forgot about bus drivers and cooks and maintenance. So
yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you. This one just read more narrow to me than that.
Yeah, I think the reason that is because it's under the academic achievement category. And that's not to say that support folks aren't going to have an influence on achievement. We know the data shows us that they absolutely do. I think that might be a better place inside of goal 6, inside of the actual business operations, is we can find a way to provide language to develop our support staff in all the ways that they deserve to be supported, perhaps not under the achievement goal, but under the operations goal.
Okay, I'm just asking because I was hoping it included everybody.
And absolutely it should. Objective 3, the creation of a district learner profile, which describes and assigns student competencies and skills that are essential for success in the 21st century. I'm not sure if the board is familiar with a creation of learner profile. You may have heard it be referred to as portrait of a graduate. It is a document that assigns and prescribes the essential skills, the life skills that the district and greater than that, the community feel are essential components of a high quality education, and what they believe can assist academic achievement in moving kids forward. These are things like collaboration and creativity, grit and empathy, and all of the things that we know are this other end that if you speak to folks who hire or business owners, they consistently talk about kids who are leaving school equipped with the X's and O's of algebra, but they can't look you in the eye and they can't have a conversation and they can't create and they can't work as part of a team and they can't get on a Skype call with complete strangers and have an intelligent conversation. So what we're attempting to achieve here with bullet point 3 is the creation of Bethel School's learner profile. What do you as a board and your greater community believe are the skills and competencies that we should equip kids with outside of their academic program? It's rapidly catching on with many districts in Ohio. We do this for a lot of districts, and we weave it into the strategic plan, and we help inform strategic decisions in the context of the learner profile. So if we say as a board and as an administration that students should be collaborative, we're not going to buy traditional school desks because those don't help kids become any more collaborative. We might instead buy movable furniture or tables or create buildings with large group settings so that kids can move and do things like that. So it can work in tandem. It works very well in tandem with your strategic plan. We heard a lot about essential skills from your community, especially at the business leaders meeting. I know many of you feel the same things. You're leaders at your own places of business, and you see those same things as well. Bullet point number 4, the study examination of district expectations for homework. This comes up often in many districts from parents. This is an attempt to better learn what our teachers are assigning, what our expectations are as administration and a board, so that we can establish some consistency. I hear from families all the time when I do these, one neighbor talks to the other and her child has 2 hours of homework, but the neighbor's child never has homework and they're in the same grade. And how does that even happen? So we're going to do a bit of an audit and examination on our homework policies to see if we can find deeper levels of consistency. And finally, bullet point 5, an internal audit of student programming. So this is your course offerings. This is your gifted platform, your special education platform, all of the remedial tracks, all of the specials and foreign languages. This is a kind of a complete audit of the academic program, which again should be done every 3 to 5 years to discover things that are no longer essential and also to discover things that might be missing. So is there enough STEM programming? I was joking with the administrators this morning. We recently completed a strategic plan, and when they performed their internal audit, I don't know how they missed it. They reminded themselves that they employed 2 full-time Latin teachers. They had 4 levels of Latin. They had AP Latin, and as an administration and as a board, they made the strategic decision to move on from Latin and to utilize those resources in STEM and in engineering and in makerspace. So we think that it's prudent that that Bethel go through that same sort of a process to see where they can create movement and to see where there are current holes in that program. Questions on the achievement goal? Okay. The final goal, goal 6, was your business operations and human resources goal, which begins with the assurance of consistent policy application between buildings. If you were like my board when I was in administration, you consistently got phone calls that student punishments for behaviors are inconsistent, and one kid gets into a fight and this happens, and another kid gets into a fight and something else happens, or Principal A doesn't handle things the same way as Principal B. And we're not saying that everything needs to be uniform and spelled out like that. We want to study our policies to make sure that our administrators, A, understand them and understand their application, and that there is some semblance of consistency, or at least having the conversations of what procedures they think are best in terms of policy application for things like student attendance, student behaviors, any other, I suppose, high occurrence issues that deal with students. We're going to try to speak to that in objective number 1 by performing an administrative policy review. Bullet point number 2, implement, promote customer service expectations and standards for all district employees. This is the assurance that all of our folks answering phones and dealing with the public have been trained to the board's and the administration's expectations, so that folks have a pleasant experience when they visit campus, so that students can know and find a trusting adult all the time, or see a smiling face in the hallway. It's just kind of that reassurance that you are in the service business. I think sometimes school folks forget that, and we're going to try to provide some proprietary training for them to help. Bullet point number 3, a targeted system of teacher, support staff, and substitute teacher recruitment. We want the best and the brightest to come to Bethel, and then we want to keep them there. And so we're going to think about ways that we can begin visiting local university job fairs, or to have Bethel on the map as a district that's going to support its teachers, support their support staff members, so that folks come and they want to stay. And then finally, 2 more, bullet point number 4, providing targeted assistance and programming to develop employees who struggle. Interestingly enough, this is usually a piece of teacher feedback where we need to ensure that when there are struggling staff members, whether it's a teacher or any other staff member, not only is there a management implementing some sort of a mechanism to provide growth, whether it's an employee assistance program, whether it's a teacher mentor or an employee mentor or an administrative mentor. It's the idea that if folks are struggling in the district, we're going to provide a support system for them, instead of simply saying, hey, do a better job. Because we've all had conversations with the folks in the workplace who've been told do a better job, and they've had that conversation 15 or 20 times. So this is a much more targeted and much more consistent system to try to help folks who might be struggling with their performance expectations. The final bullet point inside of the human resources and operations goal is, again, a best practices audit for custodial maintenance, food service, and transportation. This is the support staff member version of your curriculum audit. We're going to look at all of the operations factors for all 3 of those very important departments, to make sure that we're doing things the right way, in comparison to like districts, in comparison to best practice, to really learn about and get to the bottom of how to make them the most efficient and effective departments that you can have there on campus. Any questions inside of goal 6?
Yes, Chris.
Sure.
Go ahead, Danny.
I don't know that this needs to be in here, but I'd like to see it. Some kind of point for staff morale and culture. Okay. We as recently as last year, we'd had several years of declining staff morale, and this happens in many schools, but whether it be because of administrators or clientele or parents or whatever. Could something like that be mentioned in here somewhere?
It absolutely can. And I think we can either place that inside of the culture goal or inside of the human resources goal.
I didn't know. That's why I waited for this one. I didn't know which one it should go.
Sure. If it's okay with you, I'd like to have some conversations with Justin to see where that best fits. But I think that's a fabulous nod to your staff members from the board and the administration that we want to develop ways to take care of them.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Danny, that's an excellent point as well. And Chris, I think that should be part of our culture, because that's what we're trying to build here, is that style of culture within our organization. But because I think we still need to capture a piece that Julie brought up in this goal, and that was the professional development of the entire staff.
Sure.
We focus highly on the educational piece, which I fully understand why, but also we want to provide that professional development for everyone else.
Absolutely.
we kind of capture, to help somebody that's in trouble and a lot of the other pieces, but it doesn't feel like we really captured it. So thank you.
Absolutely. That's where, that would fall in goal 6. So we'll make sure we find a way to weave that into the operations and human resources goal, professional development for support staff members as well.
Yeah, I would definitely concur with that. I think, one of the old adages that gets used a lot is who's the first person and the last person oftentimes that sees a student in the school district? Your bus drivers. And what do you do for those folks to help them deal with an angry parent at a bus stop, or a kid that's upset, going home from school because they had a bad day or a fight with a friend? And oftentimes we focus everything on classroom teachers, and I understand that, as far as, making sure that they have the skill sets that are going to prepare our kids for the next level. But what are we doing for our cooks and our bus drivers and our maintenance folks and our classroom aides and those people that oftentimes don't necessarily get the PD that we emphasize with other classifications?
Yeah, totally agree. And another analogy with that, Mr. First, would be, how do we go from bus driver to teacher, or bus driver to substitute teacher, or from the head cook to an administrator? So I think
Correct.
also should assist in those.
Great point.
Yep. Absolutely.
One final thing for me before I wrap, I just would like to let the board know, and we let the administrators know this. We do a lot of these, and I got to tell you, in complete transparency and honesty, a lot of really positive energy in the feedback that I received from your stakeholders. Certainly, there are things that are challenges. All districts have them, all organizations have them, but I was very impressed with the feedback from the stakeholders in relation to the positive energy and Justin's leadership and some of the changes that folks have seen over the course of the past 12 to 18 months. Many of them, both in the survey and in person, indicated that they feel as if the district is really moving in a positive direction. So kudos to you as a board. Justin, I know, is doing a great job. And those are things we always like to let our partner districts know. It's always good to know that by and large, the community really truly believes the direction that you're headed. I think that's a good thing and a positive thing.
Well, Chris, this is Jacob. And one of the things I would add is, I know you brought up the challenges, but I always view those as opportunities to display excellence instead of challenges.
Absolutely. That would conclude my portion. Justin, I can turn it back over to you.
Yeah, certainly most appreciate your time, Chris. Thank you very much to the board members as well. Very excited about the direction we're moving in. Obviously, we're at the infant stages of the development of this, and there's a lot of work and a lot of details to be ironed out. And, as Chris had talked about, this is going to take over from the immediate to the next 5 years. And so we have point people at all locations, and I would expect frequent updates to the board to kind of keep you guys in the loop. But with the creation of our strategic plan and also the current development of our master facilities plan, we are getting the district on solid ground for some years ahead. So it's exciting times ahead of us, a lot of work, and we each got to roll up our sleeves and do our own parts, and we will. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Firks. What is the next item, Brennan?
That was it. So if we have nothing else, we can adjourn.
Will we be moving this to a work session or to a regular meeting to vote on accepting it, or as accepting?
You mean as far as the development of the plan?
Right. That's what I was kind of looking at, is what's the next phase in the development.
Yeah, I would need to talk to Chris about that, but I think, informally we talked as well in regards to this, and I think it's going to be the creation of the plan, and then a brief review and a thumbs up, and then it'll be presented to you folks at a board meeting for approval. Would that be correct, Chris?
Yes, we'll do these cleanup changes that we discussed this evening. Justin, I've added the administrators' assignments that we did this afternoon, as well as the dates. What we'll do back at the shop is design it very nice so that there's a community-facing portion. It'll have your brand, your photos, all of those things. And that's the document that we would ask the board to adopt in a regular session here coming up.
All right, thank you guys very much. So at this point, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Thank you, Danny. Do we have a second? Elida, any discussion? Brendan, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Ms. Mansfield,
Yes.
Ms. Reese,
Yes.
Ms. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes. Special meeting adjourned at 7:06 p.m. Thank you to our community that tuned in, and thank you to the board and obviously Chris from the Impact Group. So,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.